Okay, let's dive right into this. Stop guessing. Is parallel parking actually on your state's DMV test? Today, we are breaking down every major requirement. Welcome to this explainer, where we're finally tackling a topic that universally induces sweaty palms and white knuckles, the DMV road test. And specifically, we're targeting the most notorious maneuver of the whole shebang, parallel parking. Look, if you're a focused learner gearing up for your exam, or maybe you're helping someone who is, you are in exactly the right place. We are going to dig into the hard data and the official 2026 rule updates to show you exactly what you need to know to actually pass. Right off the bat, let's tackle the big, looming question that practically everyone has. Is parallel parking actually required everywhere? You know, when most of us think about getting a driver's license, we imagine this universal American rite of passage. We picture the exact same setup: two orange cones, a sweaty steering wheel, and an examiner holding a clipboard, silently judging your ability to squeeze into some tiny, impossible space. It's like a shared cultural anxiety. But we really have to ask, is that anxiety actually based on the reality of today's testing environment? Well, get ready, because we're about to totally shatter that illusion. What most people think exists is this monolithic, standardized national road test. The reality? In 2026, we are looking at wildly different, completely localized, state-by-state rules. Let me be clear, there is no single American driving test anymore. Driven by new legislation, changes in DMV administrative efficiency, and total shifts in safety philosophies, the test you end up taking literally depends entirely on your zip code. Now, what's genuinely wild is when you look at the breakdown across the map. Just checking out this table, over on the left, we have the traditionalists, states like New York, Texas, and Pennsylvania that still strictly require parallel parking. In the middle, states like Illinois and Washington have pivoted. They now emphasize intense straight-line backing maneuvers instead. And on the right, major states like California, Florida, and Ohio have outright removed parallel parking from their standard road tests entirely. It's a completely different landscape. Let's kick things off with Section 1, strict parking, looking specifically at New York and Texas. So our first stop brings us to the strict traditionalists. If you're in a state like New York or Texas, there's absolutely no escaping it. You've got to park that car perfectly between the boundaries, and trust me, the examiners are not grading on a curve. Let's look at New York's notoriously punishing system. They operate on a 30-point rule. Now, this isn't like a math test where you want a high score. A perfect score on the New York road test is 0. Every mistake adds points, and if you accumulate 31 points, you fail. But here is the massive catch. The parallel park is considered a high-risk maneuver. If your tire makes hard contact with the curb while you're parking, well, it's a critical error. Actually, scratch that. It's not just an error, it is an instant, automatic fail. It literally doesn't matter how flawlessly you drove for the rest of the test. And honestly, this leads straight to the ultimate New York survival tip. Instructors will literally tell their students to sacrifice 5 points before they sacrifice their entire test. Park 2 feet away if you have to. Here's the logic. If you park too far away from the curb, say 2 feet out into the road, the examiner will deduct 5 points for excessive space. But remember, you have 30 points to play with. Taking a calculated 5-point penalty is a brilliant strategic move if it absolutely guarantees you avoid the automatic fail of striking the curb. It's all about knowing the scoring matrix. Meanwhile, down in Texas, it is all about pure geometry and precision. The Texas DPS requires you to use very specific reference points. You've got to stop parallel to the car in front of you, exactly 2 to 3 feet away. Then, the Texas technique requires a sharp 45-degree angle reversal, and the absolute crucial point is their strict distance rule. To pass without deductions, your vehicle must end up perfectly centered and within exactly 18 inches of the curb. It is a highly technical evaluation of your spatial awareness, for sure.
Moving right along to Section 2, reversing rules, focusing on Illinois and Washington.
Now, what if your state just decided, parallel parking isn't the best way to measure safety? Well, Illinois did exactly that. They made a fascinating choice. They essentially removed the complex geometry of parallel parking entirely and totally streamlined their basic control skills test. Instead, they want to see pure absolute control of the vehicle in reverse. They enforce a strict focus on straight-line backing and offset tracking. They basically figured that making sure a driver can back up 50 to 100 feet smoothly without drifting out of their lane is a much better, more practical indicator of everyday vehicle control than just wiggling between two cones. And Washington State? They take this to a whole new level. Their core maneuver involves simulating backing out of a tight alley, and specifically backing around a right corner while hugging the curb. But here is the absolute kicker. You cannot rely on your fancy dashboard tech. No way. If you stare at your backup camera screen, you are going to lose massive points or just outright fail. They are strictly testing your physical observation skills. You must physically turn your body, put your arm over the passenger seat, and look out the back window. Which brings us to Section 3, New Alternatives, checking out California, Florida, and Ohio. So what about the states that completely threw in the towel on parallel parking in favor of new alternatives? You might be thinking, oh, California removed parallel parking, so their test must be a total walk in the park. Well, looking at these official California DMV results brilliantly illustrates why that is a total myth. 33% of applicants still fail. That is a staggering 1 in 3 failure rate. It remains an incredibly tough test. So if they aren't testing parallel parking, what on earth are they failing people on? So what's tripping everyone up? It basically comes down to modern safety legislation, specifically a relatively new concept called daylighting. Under California law, AB 413, daylighting legally prohibits parking near crosswalks to improve pedestrian visibility. So during your road test, the examiner isn't grading your ability to squeeze between cars. They are actively judging your knowledge of where you are legally allowed to pull over and park safely during the actual driving route. And here is the absolute magic number you need to burn into your brain right now if you're testing in California: 20. You must stay at least 20 feet away from any crosswalk, whether it's marked or unmarked, when pulling over. If the examiner asks you to pull over and you violate this 20-foot daylighting zone, you're committing a legal violation right there on the test. It's a totally modernized, pedestrian-first approach to testing parking safety. And the diversity across the rest of the map is just as wild. Just look at Florida. They completely replaced their parallel parking requirement by heavily evaluating the 3-point turn in tight spaces instead. Ohio simplified things drastically. They reduced the requirement to just a standard pull-in and back-out parking maneuver in a basic DMV lot. Maryland dropped it completely, stating it was redundant, and now they evaluate a reverse 2-point turnaround. Let's wrap things up with Section 4, Check Your State's Manual. Okay, so we've bounced from the incredibly strict 30-point curb rules in New York to the straight-line backing tests in Illinois, all the way to the pedestrian-focused daylighting laws in California. So what does all of this actually mean for you, the focused learner preparing for an exam? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the reality right here. Take Michigan's highly specific off-road skills diagram as an example. It clearly shows blindside backing curves and incredibly precise cone placements. The takeaway is you absolutely cannot rely on general driving advice anymore, and you certainly can't rely on what the test looked like when your older sibling or your parents took it 10 years ago. The rules, the maneuvers, and the automatic fail conditions are intensely localized now. Which brings us to the single most important question we can leave you with today. Do you know what's in your specific 2026 state manual? Seriously, don't guess. Stop relying on outdated myths about universal parallel parking. Go directly to your state's DMV website, pull up the 2026 testing criteria, and find out exactly what specific maneuvers are going to be on your examiner's clipboard. Master those specific skills, and you will walk into that test with absolute confidence. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and hey, happy driving!
Over 1 million learners use ABCE learning apps to pass IT exams. Find us in the bio.